Right now, millions of people are driving under the ocean, not in submarines, in regular cars, on normal roads, going to work, coming home. There are tunnels all over the world where you drive underneath massive amounts of water. The ocean is literally sitting on top of you while you're cruising along at 60 miles per hour. Most people don't even think about it, but when you really stop and think, how is that even possible? How do you build a road under the ocean without it flooding, without it collapsing? Today I'm going to show you exactly how they do it, and trust me, it's way crazier than you think. Why build tunnels underwater? Imagine you live on an island. The mainland is right there across the water. You can see it. It's only a few miles away. But to get there, you have two choices. Take a ferry that comes once an hour and costs a fortune, or drive the long way around, which takes hours. That's frustrating, right? A tunnel solves that problem. You just drive straight across. It takes minutes instead of hours. For places separated by water, tunnels are game changers. They connect islands to the mainland. They link countries. They turn 3-hour trips into 20-minute drives. And for businesses, tunnels mean cargo moves faster, workers get to jobs easier, economies grow. That's why cities spend billions building these things. But actually building them? That's the hard part, the planning stage. Before anyone digs anything, there's a lot of homework. First, engineers need to study the ocean floor. They send down cameras and sensors to map everything. They take samples of the dirt and rocks. Why? Because they need to know what they're dealing with. Is the bottom made of soft mud, hard rock, sand? Is it stable or does it shift around? Are there any caves or weak spots that could collapse? What's the water pressure down there? All of this matters. One mistake and the whole tunnel could fail. They also have to think about fish and sea life. You can't just bulldoze a coral reef or destroy where fish lay eggs. Modern projects try to minimize damage. They time construction around breeding seasons. They install artificial reefs. They use quieter equipment. Once all the planning is done, they pick one of 4 ways to actually build the tunnel. Method 1. Floating concrete tubes. This is probably the most common way, and it sounds absolutely insane when you first hear it. Here's what they do. On land, they build giant concrete tubes. I'm talking massive. Each one can be over 600 feet long and weigh as much as a cruise ship. But here's the trick. They build them hollow and seal both ends tight so water can't get in. Then they literally float these giant concrete tubes out to sea. Yeah, you read that right. They float them. Once the tube is in the right position, they start letting water into special compartments inside. Slowly, the tube gets heavier and starts sinking. Workers guide it down using cables and underwater cameras. It has to land in exactly the right spot on the ocean floor. We're talking precision down to inches. Once it touches down, they connect it to the previous section. Giant rubber seals between them keep water out. Then they pile sand and gravel on top to hold it down so it doesn't float back up. After all the sections are connected, they open the sealed ends. And boom, you've got a tunnel. Cars can drive through, trains can run through, all while the ocean sits on top. The catch? This only works in calm, shallow water with a flat, stable bottom. If the water is too deep, too rough, or the bottom is too unstable, this method won't work. Method 2. The giant drilling machine. When conditions aren't right for floating tubes, engineers bring out what's basically a giant mechanical worm. It's called a tunnel boring machine, or TBM for short. These things are massive. Picture a machine about 40 feet wide and weighing as much as the Eiffel Tower. The front has a giant spinning head covered in hardened steel teeth. It rotates slowly, grinding through dirt and rock like a huge drill. As it digs forward, the machine does something smart. It immediately installs concrete wall panels behind it to form the tunnel. Think of it like the machine is building the tunnel as it digs. The dirt and rocks it digs up get sent back on conveyor belts to the surface. And here's the really clever part. The machine keeps the pressure inside perfectly balanced with the water pressure outside. Too little pressure and water floods in. Too much and it could blow a hole through weak rock. So engineers are watching hundreds of sensors 24/7, making tiny adjustments constantly. These machines work slowly but steadily, about 60 feet per day if everything goes smoothly. The problem? They're incredibly expensive. One machine can cost over $100 million, and if it hits unexpected rock or gets stuck, you might have to dig it out, which wastes months. Method 3. Explosives, but rarely used. In really hard rock, Sometimes they use an old technique, blow it up. Workers drill holes into the rock face, pack them with explosives, clear everyone out, and blast through. Each explosion breaks through about 5 feet of rock. Then they go in, clear the rubble, reinforce the walls, and do it again. On a good day, they might do 10 to 15 blasts. Why don't they do this more often? Because explosions cause vibrations, lots of them. These vibrations can crack nearby structures and seriously mess with sea life. Plus, there's always the risk of accidentally blasting through into water, which would flood the tunnel instantly. So this method is mostly used for mountain tunnels now, not underwater ones. It's just too risky. Method 4, dig it by hand, the slow way. When nothing else works, they go old school. First, they dig a vertical shaft straight down from the surface to however deep the tunnel needs to be. This becomes the main entrance for workers and equipment. Then, teams start digging sideways, removing dirt and rock bit by bit. In soft ground, they use special cutting tools. In harder ground, they might use small, controlled blasts. After every few feet of digging, they immediately reinforce the walls with concrete and steel to prevent collapse. The biggest danger? Water pressure. If they accidentally dig into a spot where water is under high pressure, it could flood the entire tunnel in seconds. So they're constantly pumping out water and monitoring pressure. This method is slow, sometimes only 10 or 20 feet per day. But in tricky geology where the big machines can't work, it's the only option. Safety features. Once the tunnel is built, it needs serious safety systems. Modern tunnels have emergency exits every 600 feet. If something goes wrong, you're never far from an escape route. Fire suppression systems. Sprinklers and foam that activate automatically. Ventilation systems. Huge fans that push fresh air in and pull exhaust out. You can't have carbon monoxide building up in a tunnel. Sensors everywhere. Hundreds of them monitoring temperature, pressure, air quality, structural movement. If anything seems off, alarms go off immediately. Drainage pumps to handle any water that seeps in. Before the tunnel opens, engineers test everything. They check for leaks, test fire systems, run evacuation drills, make sure everything works. Keeping it working. Even after a tunnel opens, the work never stops. Maintenance teams inspect everything regularly, looking for cracks, checking waterproof seals, making sure drainage works. Those hundreds of sensors send data constantly to a control room where engineers watch for any problems. Cleaning crews run through periodically with high-pressure water to wash away dirt and debris. Why all this effort? Because even a tiny crack can become a huge problem. Water pressure at depth is intense. A small leak can quietly become a big leak, then a flood. So they fix small problems immediately before they become disasters. It's getting better. As of December 2025, the technology keeps improving. Better materials that don't crack as easily, smarter machines that dig faster, more advanced sensors that catch problems earlier. Engineers are planning tunnels that go deeper and longer than ever before, and they might become even more important in the future. As cities grow and sea levels rise, underwater tunnels could be crucial infrastructure. They're safer than bridges in storms. They don't block ships. They work in any weather. Final thoughts. So next time you drive through a tunnel that goes underwater, think about what's really happening above you. The entire ocean. Millions of tons of water pressing down. Around you, concrete and steel built with incredible precision. Below you, machines, planning, and engineering that took years to perfect. It's one of those things that seems impossible until you see it working. Humans looked at a massive body of water and said, "We're going to drive under that." And then they figured out how to actually do it. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. What do you think? Would you feel comfortable driving under the ocean? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this interesting, hit that like button and subscribe. I make videos about engineering and construction projects that most people never think about.